Hi there friends, and welcome to episode 1,004 of Not Ready to Grow Up, part of the Versus Player family. We are your regular hosts. I'm Joe.
I'm Jono.
On each episode, us two best mates, being on either side of 40, are going to invite you in on one of the million conversations we have about the nerdy things we are passionate about. Last time we spoke about New York Toy Fair itself and looked at Lego and Nerf. This time we're going to take a deep dive into Jono, one of your absolute favourites of all time.
Transformers!
What were the Transformers unveiled, mate? Take us to school. Jono, what were the Transformers standouts for New York Toy Fair 2020?
Okay, I've kept it to... Because they announced a lot of Transformers toys, but I've kept it to one thing, and that's Earthrise.
What's Earthrise?
So Earthrise is the second part of the War for Cybertron trilogy. It's part of the Generations line. So this is where it gets really confusing. Transformers has tons of lines.
And this is based on the comic line, the cartoon line?
Well, let's break it down. So there's three main lines that are really playing, actually almost four, that are really playing off by Hasbro right now. There's Generations, which is really aimed at adult collectors and kids.
Yep.
And it tends to have a lot of Generation 1 characters. In fact, a lot of it's remakes of Generation 1 characters. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. We've got the Cyberverse line, which is definitely aimed at kids. And funnily enough, is finding a lot of its inspiration from Generation 1, which is really cool. But it is very much aimed at kids under the age of, say, maybe 8. Yep. So we're not going to even look at that at all. There's cool stuff in there, definitely worth looking at, but leave it to yourself. And then there's also the Authentics line, which is, well, that's what they call it. They don't brand it that way.
That sounds fancy.
It's not. It's a really cheap line.
Oh.
Yeah, so you see like a lot of, they call them evergreen characters. So that like it's a version of Optimus that looks like versions of like they've merged every type of Optimus together into one. They're meant to be cheap toys, so they tend to be bigger, cheaper plastic at the same price point of something that might be a bit smaller. So we're not even going to mention those. And I don't think anything major was announced in that range anyway. And then there's the Studio series, which kind of mixes in with Masterpiece. They're really designed to be real collectors ones. They tend to the Studio series seems to focus on the movies.
Cool.
So I don't care about those. So let's talk Earthrise. Earthrise is where it's at for me. So first up, the really cool thing about Earthrise, it's kind of mirroring the original first season of the cartoon, although the characters aren't all pulled from there, and mirroring a lot of the first comics. And the first character we got on screen right here is Deluxe Class Arcee. So
she looks amazing.
She does look amazing. I'm really excited. They've done Arcee a couple of times in the last 10 years because when the movie first came out back in 1986, the animated movie, which you can see that gif of Arcee right there on screen right now, they didn't have the technology to make a female Transformer.
What does that mean?
Well, the reality, actually sculpting and the look, that would have been too blocky to get the look of what they made the animation model look like.
Like how Princess Leia was modelled off a Luke Skywalker figure or something
exactly,
like that back in the day. Okay.
Yeah. So like we're at the point in the last couple of years, they've made some really cool ones, but I've never really felt that they look like the one from the movie, or they look close.
Yep.
I think she looks really close.
She looks incredible. She
does. The vehicle is almost spot on, and her body's as close as I think as you're going to get to make it transform. And the hoverboard that she's standing on.
That's the obvious question I was going to say. What is she standing on? Just part of the car.
They're calling it a hoverboard. It is. Sure. It is the roof of the car. Look,
you know what? When the rest of the figure looks that good, I say you have a pass.
I agree entirely, and I'm thinking the same. And also, there's a figure in the Earthrise range called Cliff Jumper, who again is a G1 character, who has a piece that comes off like this, but you can leave it on in the transformation. I reckon Arcee is going to be the same, so we'll wait and see.
Very cool.
Now, Deluxe Class is your traditional sort of like, $40, $30 figure, which, when we were kids was $10, $15.
That's how it works.
And, of course, there's a few more Deluxes. These aren't all of them, but I picked out a couple. I really like Smokescreen because there's a couple of UK comics that I think he did really well in with one of my favourites, Inferno.
And he looks quite animated there as well, like the style really of it. Very cool, the curves and whatnot.
They actually did a Smokescreen last year in Siege, which was the first part of War for Cybertron, which was all set on Cybertron. And this looks better as far as I'm concerned.
Cool.
It's some debate. Fast Track is interesting. I'm going to talk about him a little bit more in a second, but he's a character that originally came with a bigger figure back in the 80s. He's now completely separate, and he's what they call a weaponizer. We had some last year. His transformation, you actually pull him apart, and then you piece him back together.
Okay.
But he can be plugged in to gun ports on people like Smokescreen and the others to be a weapon system for the other figures.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
what a cool way to like get double use out of your toy.
Exactly. And because he was tied to this other character, him being a weaponizer is perfect. He's a Decepticon.
Cool.
And then the last one we have is another Decepticon, Airwave. Back in the 80s, he was a Micromaster base. So Micromasters were the Transformers version of Micro Machines.
Yep.
And he was a base. So he actually wasn't a sentient transformer. He was an airport that transformed into a battle station.
Okay.
They've made him a sentient transformer this time
Very
around.
cool.
He works with the Micromasters that are in the range, and I'm not going to talk about today, but you can look them up.
Yep.
They're all small transformers, maybe a third of the size of a deluxe class.
Cool.
And they come in 2-packs as opposed to in the 80s where they came in 4-packs. He's cool. I really like him. And he's similar to the weaponizers in that you pull him apart to rebuild him. So some people don't like the fact that you pull apart a transformer into pieces. I think for what they're there for, they do a really cool job.
And you can make fun things with it, I guess, as well when you combine them.
Exactly.
And
Or you can build bases together, and that's a really big thing in Earthrise this year. There's some characters that are called Battle Masters that are like little transformers that turn into weapons for Deluxe class and bigger. And this year there's a lot of ramps that connect to things like Airwave Space Mode.
Nice. So
really cool. And then got a couple more Deluxes. So Alicon, who's just popped up on screen, is from Transformers the movie as well, and he was with a group called the Quintessons, which I'll talk about more in a second. And then, and before we even got to talk about Run Amok, the Quintessons have already appeared on screen. So Run Amok was just another Deluxe.
Yep.
He back in the day, you'd pull him back and he'd spring up and transform. He doesn't do that anymore, but he's a cool transformer.
But what is this here, Jono?
Voyager class Quintesson Judge.
How is this a transformer? What was it? 3 heads on this one?
Actually, I think it's 6 or 5 heads, if I remember rightly. And so in the 86 movie, animated movie, the Quintessons were a race of beings that, well, the judges were the top tier of these guys, and they would judge you to be innocent or guilty. And really, it didn't matter which one you were, you still got chucked into the pit of Sharkticons.
Of course.
Or Alicons, like the ones we saw before.
Sure. It all makes sense to me.
He didn't transform in the cartoon, but it's really cool that this actually looks like the 86 cartoon. And then the other cool thing is that his transformation is turning into like the base that they had in the movie.
Yep.
And it's got a little cage cell which will fit a Micromaster.
That is cool.
So it's really funky. For anyone who's a fan of the 86 movie, this is just awesome.
This looks like something out of Ninja Turtles for me, more than Transformers.
Yeah, it does a bit, yeah. Well, the really cool thing is there's a little switch down the bottom that you can flick and the head spin around. So the judge that we're looking at right now on screen is Death.
Ooh.
So usually if he popped up, you knew you were getting chucked to the Sharkticons. He popped up a lot. Now, let's jump up a size... Scale size, which is what I was going for, yep. And this is Commander Class. Commander Class is new to Transformers in terms of size. It was introduced last year with Jetfire, or I like to call him Skyfire, because that's what he was in the cartoon. He looks like the cartoon version of Skyfire. I love him, but this is SkyLynx.
And this looks like something out of Power Rangers. This is awesome. I'm a fan of this one.
And the really cool thing is he's really spot on to the 80s version. There's been 1 or 2 SkyLynx since. There was one a couple of years ago. This one's all the look of the 80s version, but with all the articulation of today.
Yep. And what we're seeing there is that's one transformer. All those modes there from one figure you buy.
Exactly. So he starts off as a space shuttle with a gantry crawler down the bottom to take him to lift off. This is a new mode. He transforms into a base where the shuttle can launch from.
So the bottom right?
The bottom right.
Very cool.
In the middle, you can see the bird and the Lynx mode.
Yep. And
they combine into SkyLynx.
It's awesome. And then you got Voltron in the bottom middle.
Well, that's the Lynx.
It's so cool. It's a really cool transformer, and the color scheme looks
totally
like you said, very old school style. I think that's going to be a popular one.
And the cool thing in the comics and the cartoons, he was always a very prim and proper and high and mighty type character. He thought very highly of himself. So they've played on that, and if you get a good look at the vehicle mode, really close up in the corner of the shuttle. They've named the shuttle this time around as if it's a NASA shuttle. They even put the NASA logo down the very end, and they've called the shuttle Magnificence because that's what he thinks of himself.
That's very cool.
Now, last but not least, we're going to the big one. This is a Titan class Transformer. His name's Scorponok. So if you followed the 80s Transformers, there were a range of Transformers called Headmasters, which only a couple of years ago they redid and called Titan Masters, and they had little Transformers that turned into their heads. So if you're looking at the bottom right corner, you can see the head, Lord Zarek, who would then transform and become the head of Scorponok. Now, because Titan class Transformers are over 2 foot tall.
So that's like 60 centimeters.
Yeah, so huge. Having something really small, which is barely only not even 10 centimeters tall, turn into his head wouldn't have worked because he was a little bit smaller back in the day. So he's got an intermediate robot, a deluxe class Transformer, who's also called Lord Zarek. So we don't know what's going on yet, whether they're going to have separate names. They should do. The little one was originally Lord Zarek. He transforms into the head of the deluxe class next to him on the left, who then transforms into the head of Scorponok.
That is so cool.
Of course, Scorponok turns into a big scorpion. You can see that in the top right. And in the middle, you can see base mode, which, funnily enough, for a Transformer who's a Decepticon, the bad guys, all the vehicles sitting on top of him and around him are Autobots. But they were the first wave of Earthrise characters that were released just in the last month.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
In the last month in the States, we've yet to see them in Australia. It should be soon.
Cool.
But that's, I think, all the Transformers that I talked about. Now, there were a few more. Oh, sorry. Actually, I do have on screen right now the other Titan class Transformers. So this has been going on in the last couple of years. Like I said, they're big Transformers.
Yeah.
I personally have the third from the left, which is Triptychon. I didn't get Metroplex and Fort Max before them, although I do have an 80s version of Fort Max called Brave Maximus, and which was released in the 2000s, but we'll get into that in another episode. And I wouldn't mind Omega Supreme, who's on the right. He was released last year and is still in shops.
Very cool.
But I definitely want to get Scorponok.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and
see.
see.
So that's your standout from all of the Transformers shown off?
I want them all. But yeah, if you haven't already seen the rest of Earthrise Series 1, take a look. Optimus Prime's definitely in there. Same with Starscream and a couple of the other real classics. But there's some really cool Transformers this year.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jono. And we hope you join us next time in our next episode where we'll look at Micro Machines, Ghostbusters, and G.I. Joe revealed at New York Toy Fair 2020. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay young at heart.
Stay young at heart, yeah.